Hey guys, Chef Fortunato back again for another video. This video, I want to show you a little bit about knives and knife safety and knife skills. So I'm going to be doing a couple of videos individually on how to sharpen a knife and how to cut an onion. This one, we're just going to be going over some basics on knives and knife features. So what I have here is a classic chef's knives. They also can go by cook's knife or French knife, but a classic 8-inch chef knife will have a bolster, this fat part on the bottom. Okay, it has a spine that goes right along the back part. Obviously, the cutting edge, which is a sloped edge, and it allows you to move that knife in a nice fluid gliding motion on the cutting board. 3 rivets is a classic style, although you do not have to have the rivets. There are other knives that have resin or plastic handles like so. All right, so you may not have a rivet or rivets on there. That's not essential. What you do want to make sure is that the knife has a completely full tang. That piece of metal that runs right down the handle ensures that this whole knife is one big large piece of metal, not a knife with a little piece of metal wrapped with plastic. That is one, you're going to have 2 problems. You're going to have a balancing issue, which means the front end is going to be very heavy and it's going to be a lot of work on your wrist. And 2, possibly the much more inexpensive knives, if you press down hard enough, sometimes that handle could give way and snap in half, which is obviously a dangerous thing. I do like the classic 3 rivet black handle. That is one of my preferences, although so the other ones do work. The chef knife also has a tip, which allows you to pierce in and do some small piercing or pairing with the chef knife. So this chef knife has a bunch of features. That thick part, that bolster over here, allows you to almost act like a wedge or a cleaver, and allows you to bust through some chicken bones or heavier frozen items. So that gives you that more beefier area, which is heavier. So this knife is designed to be held with your pointer finger and your thumb pinching right on the blade, like so, and 3 fingers around the handle. That's going to give you the most stability and security of that knife. You want to make sure you don't put your finger on top of the knife. That's a big no-no. Okay, that gives you a little false sense of security, because when you push down on that cutting board, very easily that knife can slip and spin in your hand. So you want to make sure that pointer finger is tucked around and clasped between your pointer finger and your thumb. The knife blade goes right between. 3 of the fingers go around the handle, and that is the proper way to hold this. Now I'm going to go over a knife sharpening demo in one of my next videos, so please stay tuned for that. But I do want to show you a couple of tools you want to have on hand, which is great for all cutting. Obviously, a good cutting board. Cutting boards could be wood, they could be plastic, they could be resin. Glass cutting board, that's not a cutting board, that's a trivet. Okay, cutting on glass is going to be not safe for your hands and not really good for the knife. Just really poor choice for a cutting board. You want something that's going to be sturdy enough, that's going to hold your product and not get chipped and slashed away, but you want it to be soft enough where it's going to give a little on the knife blade. Glass is very, very hard, and you will dull the heck out of your blade very quickly, and you'll be causing a lot more harm than you are doing good. So glass is no good. Wood, fine. Plastic, fine. There are some resin type of cutting boards out there which work as well. Secondly, always want to have something to anchor that cutting board down. A wet paper towel, which is you're going to take a wet paper towel or 2, depending on the size of your cutting board, wet it down slightly, wring it out, and then flatten it back out, okay, like so. Or I like this because it's reusable. You have one of these nice little draw lining rubber mats that also helps to anchor that cutting board in place. Put it down on top, give a little push, and this thing is not going anywhere. So safety first. Really hard to be cutting food if you're chasing the food at the same time. So if your cutting board is stationary, your food will be stationary, much better. Third, right, moving on to tools, right? You have your knife, you have your cutting board. I love having a bench scraper. They also call them dough cutters. These things are great for just multi-purpose scraping and keeping your cutting board clean. I am guilty of doing this in the past, and I still do it every once in a while when I get lazy. But when you do that, when you scrape the blade, you dull the knife up, and you also can run a risk of slipping and filleting your hand. So if you have to or you must use a knife, or you don't have another tool, use the back end of the blade or the spine. That'll allow you to pick things up without dulling anything and potentially cutting yourself. Also, these things are great for, like I said, just multi-purpose cleaning, scraping your cutting board, and you don't have to worry about cutting yourself because it is not sharp enough to cut yourself. So it also works great because you can screw up a lot of product at one time. So great tool to have on hand. And then we're going to talk a little bit about honing a knife, okay? Honing a knife requires a tool or tools that look like these. Okay, these are what are called steels. This classic one, they call them a butcher's steel. And people get confused between the difference between using one of these and sharpening. Sharpening is literally removing or shaving the metal off of the side of the blade to make the blade or the cutting edge fine again. This, on the other hand, is not sharpened. This is like a big magnet. I'm going to talk a bit about the difference between these in a second. But this is a big magnet. What it does is that if you imagine the knife blade looking almost like a triangle, right? A very fine triangle if you look at a microscope. But it's not one piece of metal. They're little fine little fingers. And when they're all in alignment, the knife blade is sharp. As you start to use this and run it along the cutting board, those little microscopic fingers of metal start to bend and curl in different directions. And they're not aligned up. So by striking this or rubbing it against this, what it does is it takes those misaligned, microscopic teeth of metal and it re-straightens them out. So it does not shave or remove metal. All it does is hone or straighten that edge back out again. So this is nothing more than a big magnet. That's all it is. So the classic one, or classic ones, tend to be round. This is a very long one, meant for butchers' use, right? Because their knives tend to be much longer. They also have, which I prefer, these are called diamond steels. They do have a small amount of a fine diamond grit in there, which also does small amounts of sharpening. But if you notice, they call it a diamond because it has like that kind of like that diamond shape to it. And that gives you a little more of a flatter surface area. Actually hones the knife a lot better. I prefer these, but the classic round ones work just as well. To use these things, a couple ways. I'm going to show you the safest way. It is not the most glamorous way, but the safest way, and it's all about technique, not about a show. Right? When you start to get very talented, you can do something that looks like this, freehanding it, and a lot of people do that, but do it incorrectly. Okay? The best and safest way to do it is you're going to take a towel or cloth, and that's going to anchor the tip of that and keep it stationary from sliding around. If you put it on the cutting board like this, it would move around on you. So by just putting it like that, and the idea here is you want to start from the butt end of the blade and moving all the way to the tip. You want to get the entire blade, both sides, and what you want to do is you want to maintain the correct angle, and that's the biggest and most important thing. Angle meaning, right, if it's flat like this, there is no distance, you're really not doing much. If I open that angle up way too much, you're actually dulling the knife and not actually sharpening it. Most knives require something between 17 and 20 degree angle. Now, what is that? The old adage was the width of a matchbook, but people don't use matchbooks anymore. So I'm going to show you quickly. It's about the thickness of a thumb, of your thumb, right? If you notice, I can move this in a little more. You can see that like that, how my thumb is between the blade and the side of the steel. That's about what you want to be at. Right? Again, it's something that you have to sit there and be absolutely 100% precise, but you want to maintain that angle from the butt all the way to the tip. If you're moving this like this, then you're going to be doing, more damage to the knife than good. So what you want to do is, again, from the butt end of the knife, maintain that angle, and you don't have to push hard. Whatever you do to one side, you always do to the other. It should almost, they say, sing. You should almost see like a little kind of a chimed type of sound to it. And you don't have to do it 100 times. I would say approximately 4 to 8 times on each side. And you can't really overdo it, okay? I like to always have my steel next to me, and whenever I am cutting, periodically, you want to give it a couple of strikes on either side, and you're good to go. Now, what I want you to be aware of is that since this is a magnet, it picks up little microscopic pieces of metal dust. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here. So you always want to wipe your knife off, because you'll have a little bit of, almost looks like a pencil, right? It looks like graphite. So you always want to wipe your knife off, unless if If you don't do that, then that is going to go right into your food. Let me show you what that looks like here. I'm going to have a paper towel here. I'm going to wipe my steel off so you can see what is stuck there and also on your knife. Right, so you can see that. That is all microscopic metal dust, which if you don't wipe your knife, well, it's going right into your food. So that is an important thing, to always wipe your knife off to make sure that it is clean and free of metal. And then you can go about cutting your next product. It's a great thing to always have this on hand and do it every once in a while. I always do it before, every time I use my knife, and every time after I wash my knife before I put it away. So it's a good thing to have. Like I said, you can't overdo it. Right? And we'll talk about sharpening knives in a future video. And that is kind of knife 101, okay? Especially for a chef knife. Appreciate you watching my video. Stay tuned for the next video, which I'm going to show you how to sharpen and also cut a onion. Thank you very much.